What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Digital Banter. It's been a hot minute or months, I guess, since we last had an episode. That music, James, it's been a while since we heard that one, right?
It has new music, actually. New season, new music. I was kind of thrown off by it a little bit myself.
So while we have not recorded an episode in months, we are welcoming back a 3-time guest, Tas Bober.
What up?
Tas from, I believe, the Scroll Lab, as you are now calling it, correct?
Correct.
Is it official? Is it official yet?
It is not fully official. Waiting on Kevin Rapp. Kevin Rapp, you are taking way too long. But legally, it's still going to be the old name because it's just too much of a pain in the ass. But marketing wise, it's that. So I've changed the name everywhere, just not on the stuff that Kevin's in charge of. So
Have you ordered any swag yet?
no, but it is on the list. And I want like cool swag. And not even the ones that say Scroll Lab on it. I want stuff that says like dead lead. Things like that.
I want a Scroll Lab snapback. That's maybe I'm gonna start collecting. I want like trucker hat snapback swag from all my friends. That's pretty much it.
Oh, someone said there's no audio. Is that true?
It's just them, is my guess.
Sorry, that's
there we go. Never mind.
Anyway.
Alan, keep your thoughts to yourself.
Anyway, so Tas, your focal point in the B2B ecosystem is around landing pages. And we've talked, a couple times on past episodes around that. But I think today's episode in particular, we're going to shift the narrative and focus a little bit more on the pain and the challenge of folks that are not seeing the outputs and impact of their landing pages on leads, and rethinking that paradigm and making a shift towards less focus on conversions and more about consumptions. Yeah. But before we get into all of that kind of shakeup and different kind of points of view, we are also shaking things up as far as our segments are concerned on Digital Banter. And we want to kick this off with a question. How the hell did you end up in B2B marketing?
Let me actually start with this because I like this question. So
okay.
First of all, I have this philosophy that everybody just kind of falls into B2B. They end up in B2B. Nobody goes, I'm sure if you went in Exit 5 and asked how many of you dreamt of being a B2B marketer when you grew up, 0 of them would have said, yes, that's what I want to do. Maybe Dave, because he's a thought leader, but that's pretty much it. But I want to know, start out, what did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a kid? And then how did you end up falling in B2B?
Oh boy, we're going deep in the archives. Wanted to be a vet. Decided then that blood made me woozy, so ruled that one out real quick. And then I was like, okay, maybe I want to be a writer. And so I kind of stuck with that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be a journalist. That's great. Like, I'm going to write for a living. And so when I went to college, I was majoring at the time in journalism. I was bored out of my mind because anyone who has any interaction with the Indian education system, which is very closely tied to the British education system, it is like insane. And then I went to an American college and it was just so easy that I was bored. And so I asked my dean, I was like, hey, can I go do my internship like as a first year? Would that be weird? And she's like, no, if you want to. And I was like, okay. So I went and found my first job, which was for this business publication. And my editor was like, listen, you're really good. Okay. Don't take this the wrong way, but you're going to absolutely hate writing for other people. I'm like, okay. Is this like a performance review? Like, I'm not, is this like an attitude thing? Like, I don't know what's happening right now. And then, he's like, but look, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. Just when you go back to college now, just change your major, broaden it up a little bit, which is so weird because I'm very like pro narrow everything down now. He's like, broaden up a little bit, but back up your backup. So he's like, go back, make it a communications thing so you can like do multiple things in communications, including journalism, and then minor in something that's technical. And so I did a communications major, marketing minor with a website front end focus. And lo and behold, marketing and websites are like what my life has become now. Um, and I guess a little bit of writing, some journalistic stuff, which apparently James thinks my content's both good and bad. So we'll get to that. And yeah, so that's kind of like how it got started. But as far as B2B went, like no one, I feel like no one starts off going, I'm gonna sell to other businesses. Everyone's like, I'm gonna work at Google and I'm gonna work at Apple and I'm gonna, sell at Old Navy or whatever. And then and then something happens and you're like, oh, there's actually a whole like boring side of this, and you just fall into it, which was weird because the first 6 years of my career, I worked at an NBC TV station in Des Moines, Iowa. Booming metro.
Wow, exciting times.
Very exciting times. Um, yeah, I mean, it was so funny because, like, side tangent, everyone in Iowa, that there's a thing about Iowa nice. Like, people are really nice in Iowa,
Mhm.
and they were so sweet, and they would very sweetly ask me when they'd meet me. They're like, "Hey, so no offense, but what are you doing here?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "Well, why are you in Iowa? Like in a nice way. Like why would you choose to come here? Like we were born and raised here. Why are you here?" And I'm like, "I love Iowa. It's cool." Um but I was mainly in B2B2C, I guess, kind of, because at the TV station, we sold advertising to other businesses to sell to customers or our viewers. We did that. I was an AE there for 3 years. And then the actual pivot into B2B actually only happened when I moved into SaaS. So it was B2B2C for half of my career, and then it just went B2B, and I was like, kind of liked like the long sales cycles and arguing about attribution and stuff like that. Just kidding. I hate all of that, but here
And
I am.
not working from Thanksgiving to the New Year's.
That is splendid. Let me just tell you, because one thing at the TV station, if the weather was bad, oh, you're coming into work because that's our bread and butter, right? So like here's this tropical person who's never driven in snow, like crying all the way to the TV station, driving my car, but like going 2 miles per hour because I was so scared. Yeah, so those hardships have prepared me for B2B.
I have a hypothesis that the reason that the B2B marketing community is so strong is because one, a lot of it is based in the Midwest, and there's a lot of Midwest nice that happens out there. And like, I feel like everybody started out with like, oh, I want to be, work in e-commerce and sell this and do like I don't know, the fast paced life, I'll call it. And then they see a B2B job and then they get it and they're like, okay, this is gonna be boring. And I do it for a while. And then they realize like the flexibility, it's relaxed. And, uh, there's also not as many people like critiquing your creative ideas in the same way.
I don't know about that.
I don't know about that, James.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
well,
like,
okay,
out-
A pixel to the left, please.
yeah.
Pixel to the left.
yeah, if that one resonates, shout out to who gave me that.
Okay,
advice
first of
one time.
all, yes, we don't work holidays, but would I say that it's not stressful? No way. Like I worked 50, 60 hours a week, and like for B2B, which has like an average sales cycle of 3 months, there's a lot of shit that they want us to do like within
Yeah.
2 days or prove within a week. And we're like, so we are constantly arguing about things that B2C doesn't argue about. Like B2C knows this campaign's going to take X amount of time. We're probably going to get a response this time. But I feel like the people who weren't like maybe raised in B2B and then they come in here and like they've kind of tainted the industry because we try to measure B2B the same way we do B2C. And that's what causes a lot of stress for us. It would be far more relaxed if we just acknowledged like, oh, shit's going to take 3 to 6 months or whatever. And it's like sometimes marketers aren't even there for 6 months before they see the fruition of their work. And then we also have this like the lack of creativity, I think, shoots us in the foot because like we want to be, oh yeah, totally, it is much of an exercise in expectation management. It's like you're managing so many stakeholder opinions. You're trying to like tell people like, hey, it's gonna take some time, and we're like, oh, how much time? Well, okay, 90 days. Okay, cool. But then in the monthly reporting meeting with the CMO, what are you gonna say? And that's why we have this like leads, hurrah, rah, rah, let's buy them for 17 cents. We talked about that during our last episode. And it's like, that's why content syndication exists. So list buying exists is because of B2B. I feel like B2C doesn't have this problem.
Do you feel like that? Like, I mean, let's use that as a jumping off point then into like the core part of our conversation. I mean, is that mentality then also jading I mean, you mentioned it yourself about measurement and attribution and measuring things in a D2C mindset, but that doesn't work when you have a 3-month sales cycle. You know, does that also translate into, let's say in this case, landing page strategy and like the desire to force somebody down into a conversion, like in that outdated thinking or in
Yeah.
a different model?
Yeah, because and that's the gap I found, right? When I like pivoted into the landing page niche, I'm like, okay, I just regurgitated information that we've all been taught for many, many years now, which is if you just look up landing page template or landing page best practices, you're going to get all these like HubSpot articles and Unbounce and all of this stuff. And all of that works great from a B2C context when you want direct response, or maybe like very top of funnel for us, like someone trying to, sign up for an event or get an ebook or something like that. It works like that. But then we think we can do the same shit for like product related landing pages or campaigns. And it's like, no, like, you know how much convincing needs to happen? You're not convincing one person. And it's funny because I'll get pushback from people who are more in like the PLG space where they're like, yeah, but we're not trying to do like a business case or anything for like our customers don't care about that. I'm like, okay, I'm the decision maker and I use a bunch of tools. Like my husband's here, shout out Mr. Bober. But um he knows like we will use something and we'll push it to the limits of free before I ever make a business case to myself to justify the purchase. I don't care if it's $20 and I don't care if it's like $5,000. It's going to be the same thing. Like ChatGPT, I gave myself a whole year. I'm like, I need to use this for a year before I'm even paying for this thing. And I only just started paying for it like 2 months ago. And when I did, my husband's like, oh, I guess we don't talk about purchases anymore. Like what? I'm like, I did my due diligence with doing it. So that's why I'm like, you still got to make the business case, and we don't think we need to do that. We're like, hey, give us your information right now. And then you can see if if we're going to be worth your time or money.
So now we know why you have all the elongated hyphens in your posts.
M dashes.
I actually
M
do
dashes.
not. I actually do. Yeah. M dashes. Yes. Again, my husband's like, what's an M dash? Like this thing. I had to
AI.
like show him.
Find the button on the keyboard. You get $1.
It's like 3 buttons, right? Before you can get to it.
I don't know.
So if a landing page should not have the objective of driving a conversion, then what should it have the objective of?
Dun, 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 dun. Drum roll. What's his name? Zen
I
Pouch
don't
guy?
have Ian, I don't think we have the button for it, but
No, this isn't like a soundboard. This isn't like a studio.
yeah.
Oh, need to up
I
your
do
game,
have that,
guys.
but-
It's been maybe the
All right,
fourth
we also
time.
play with the free version.
Yeah, no, I think specifically in B2B that buyers are information and research heavy. They're collecting this information either to put a business case together or make a business justification for themselves on whether they should engage with the product or engage with the company. The other thing that we've done and shot ourselves in the foot is like we unleash the SDRs like pit bulls, right? If somebody's just like download an ebook, it's like intent, get him, and right. And we've done that. So then that makes buyers a little more risk averse where they're like, I'm not going to interact with this brand until absolutely necessary, where I feel like I'm 80% there and I just need a little push, right? So if that's the case and that's what they're doing, like I had, and I'll share it with you guys, I had like a business case justification deck that I've had and carried with me for 3 companies now, where anytime I wanted to justify a purchase, large or small, even free, okay? Sometimes like even getting Hotjar, I had to like put a business justification in for a free product and like do this roadshow internally about like why we need it, what are the goals, how much is it going to cost, will there be adoption, will there be implementation, here's the timeline, all of those things. And so when I started working on landing pages, I'm like, the reason why they're taking so long to convert, or we're finding a lot of bounce rates and stuff, we're not giving them all the information they need for that business justification. And we need to be upfront with that, right? If the, like Dave Gerhardt, our thought leader, our B2B thought leader, um, he's like, our job is to make sales's job easier. Yes, but then that happens if you make it easy for the buyer to do their job. That comes first. And then by way of that, there's a domino effect. So I think we should really focus on how people are consuming information on the page. Are we giving them the relevant information on the page? And then are they coming back? And most likely they're not converting on the landing page itself, but converting on the main website because maybe they can't find the landing page. Again, I have a post that's coming out tomorrow where I'm like, a landing page is not a destination. It's actually the start of the journey, right? It's planting the seed. It's giving them that information. They're like, huh, okay. And they leave. I can't tell you the last time I've purchased something directly from a landing page myself, right? I'm always like, I do my exploration, I see what information they give me, I collect that, I talk to my boss, I do the roadshow, and then I come back, I talk to them, try to get pricing because that's really, that's another battle. And then convert on the main website. And then we sit here going, huh, interesting. Direct traffic was up this month. Wonder what that is. People must have just been searching for us. Anyway, how the paid campaigns doing? Like, what's going on there? And you're like, dude, that, like, they all, rising tide lifts all boats. No one. Okay, cool.
So how do I guess the question is like what do people expect when they get to a landing page now then, right? Because I totally agree with you that no, the old like form on the right and basically ChatGPT copy on the left is should be dead in the water. I will also stand back. Like I still see this work to an extent, but
Yeah.
I do like your philosophy better as far as like where it fits in the customer journey. But then it's still question stands like, okay, what's the difference between that and the homepage that has all of the information, or what are they expecting when they get to a landing page? The
Hmm.
nav thing, I promise I wouldn't discuss like
You can
what
discuss it.
yeah, but it's like it's another thing, right? So like how much do you expect them to navigate away from the landing page? Because I do think that they should be able to navigate away from the landing page. So I don't know, a lot of questions in one, but what should they expect when they get there?
So what they're expecting right now is the initial, like the standard like landing page template that you can picture with your eyes closed, right? And that's when we got to flip the narrative a little bit. And I think when we do that, it's very like company centric. I mean, here's the thing, you guys have worked firsthand with me, and we did this firsthand with one of your clients, where it was like the longest landing page of our freaking lives, but if it worked, weirdly. And it was because of this, like, you are making it very buyer forward. And I think the biggest thing is like addressing their problems. Like, we like to do this other thing in B2B, which is like, let's agitate the pain, twist the knife, make them feel it, and then they'll come to us, right? Like, twist it, blood everywhere. The show is R-rated. Apologies,
Yes.
everybody. Um,
Emotion doesn't always have to be negative.
yeah, I think there's like just reframing that into, can we show a little empathy? You know, if it's Calendly and you're like, here are the problems that you're likely facing, right? You're sending a dozen emails back and forth just to nail down a time. Then you add in more people who are trying to do that. That's like now a complicated process. Um, and then that's essentially slowing down, when you have availability, when you can do stuff, how projects move. And I think that's very like factual and stating like, hey, these are the problems you're experiencing. And the buyer's going, oh, check, check, check. That makes sense. Versus like, the it's like those, I always think of like those balding commercials or something, like those infomercials. It's like, feeling down, lost all your hair, girls not checking you out anymore. It's just like really driving. You're like, dude, okay, chill out. And so I think we try to again adopt the wrong things from B2B of B2C and try to put that in B2B, and we're like, agitate it. And they'll come to us and buy our $30,000 product. So like on the landing page, if we think about all the things that a buyer has to do to justify the cost, then we're thinking, okay, they need to know that they're in the right place. So it's like, what are you? Who are you for? Which is the basics. B2B does not get this right. What are the problems that you exist to solve? How do you solve them? So, like, the other thing we love to do is like feature dump, like as if they're product specifications, right? Like, you go to Old Navy's page and then they're like, the seams are like 15 point or whatever, 32-inch seams and blah, blah, blah. And then we think that works in B2B, where we're like, yeah, this feature and this integration, and it's like this AI capability and all of these things. And we just dump on there and we expect them to just figure it out. We're like, we give them all the information. We're great. But it's like, we need to talk about those features in context of what they solve, right? Like, you can talk about seams, or you can say high-waisted pants, right? That kind of gets the message across in a little more of a layman's term and layman's fashion. So just similar things there. And then obviously the proof and credibility, which is being very relevant, not just the same 3 testimonials on every page of the website. And then FAQs, which is the objection handling that they're actually hearing on sales calls or actually getting on feedback. And then finally making the ask. So it's kind of like the sequential story like format where you're saying, this is who we are. This is who we're for. If we're not for you, bounce. Cool. These are the problems that we solve. You're not having these problems, bounce. That's cool. This is how we solve those problems, because we obviously acknowledge and have an understanding of the market. Here are other people like you we have helped. Here are some common objections that we found and how we tackle them. And hey, if you really want to know more information, reach out to us.
This is interesting because this basically what you said there essentially, Matt, like one of the things that we focus more on is content strategy and like creative strategy more on the ad side before the landing page. And those are like the 4 things that we focus on as far as like, well, you see product focused ads all the time, right? Like this feature, this feature, this feature, buy our stuff. And like we take this whole approach of leading with emotional messaging, pain points, then justifying with social proof, common objections, and so on. So it's like it's right in line, and it just shows that like from the customer journey, it's like, okay, you have to start with that stuff. The landing page is a step in the journey. The content and whatever the deliverable after that also has to match that. It's not just one thing.
The other
I'm
thing,
also like, I see so many posts on LinkedIn that's like, people buy with emotion first and justify with logic later. And I see a lot of that for B2B. And from a buying perspective, like, the only time I ever got emotional about any purchase is when I'd have like my CMO come to me and say, hey, you need to go buy this tool because like I'm on the board or whatever, or like telling me that I need a tool that I really don't need and I have to like somehow become the champion for and have to like deal with it now in the workflow. And maybe that's just me, but I was a very like logical buyer. I think the only thing I was most afraid of was making a recommendation that wasn't correct. But then you'd have like a lot of accountability, like shared accountability in it. And it's like, it's kind of frowned upon. If I went in there and I was like, I'm making an emotional decision or whatever, or I reacted emotionally to make a decision, I feel like my bosses and peers would be like, okay, that's not how we
Well,
make
think
decisions.
think
Like, we
about the
still have.
shiny object syndrome that people deal with though, right? So like I'll give an example. Think about every ABM platform out there. I don't know if you've seen this the way that we have, but we have many clients who have 6sense demand base. It was purchased and then literally nobody used it. That like to me says that this was bought on like emotion doesn't have to be tied back to the pain point. It could be just like shiny object syndrome. Like I want to be on the top of whatever it is. And I think that we see that a lot,
Mm.
like a lot. And yeah, you're probably a smarter buyer than most people.
I just don't like spending money. So maybe that was my thing too. It's like, even in-house, it was just like, I was just not
Yeah.
not the person that's like, I feel like I'm gonna drop 50K because I feel like I'm missing the 6 cents boat.
No.
Like, that's just
Well, I
no.
think the emotional element is different, right? A lot of it's like tied back to whatever the task is that you're trying to achieve. Like if you're emotional, like you want to be forward thinking in your job and get a raise and bring new ideas to the table, like your tech buying habits are going to follow that.
Mhm.
Um, if you are stuck in your ways and want to keep things the same and don't want to change your process and don't want to improve, they're like, there's an emotional element in that too.
Mhm.
Everybody's seen the was a person who's been around for forever who doesn't want to change their process. Like that's a whole different emotion to tap into.
There's two things that stuck out to me and kind of what you guys were just talking about. And the first is the outdated mentality of landing page strategy being structured around like outcome or content rather than audience. Because to your point, Tess, like you're a logical buyer. So, okay, if that's the case, then a landing page and the content structure and the narrative that goes into that has to appeal to you as the decision maker versus, let's say, if James is on your team and he's the one that has to champion through this deal. It's a completely different set of outcomes, completely different set of content. And instead, we're still stuck in this model of, oh, we've got a white paper going live, or we've got a PLG model and we need to, get that freemium version out there. And here's the only CTA we want on here. It's like, okay, but in the world that we play in, where we are crafting paid strategies and we're controlling the audience, we have a much greater control over what we're saying, how we're saying it.
Mhm.
And the other thing that stuck out to me was your comment about like flipping the narrative task. How I see that too is like all of our clients, most of them anyway, have a competitive market that they're operating in. Yes, they might have different value props, they might have different competitive advantages, they might have imagery, but the other thing that they can stand out amongst in that crowded nature is the buyer journey and how you are appealing to them rather than just directing them to another landing page that fits the narrative that they might be expecting. And if you can catch them by surprise, you're going to delight them. You're going to create that emotional response without having to say it. And you're going to get a logic-based outcome, in my opinion.
Yeah, the catching by surprise, because like if you any survey or just talking to any marketer or talking to any buyer, I think I interviewed my husband once on buying because he's in a totally different space, right? Like he's in data analytics and business intelligence. And so I just interviewed him, not as husband and wife, but as like marketer to like someone who's very marketing averse. Like he constantly is like, I don't even know how like you make a living as a marketer, like how a marketer's in business. I'm like, okay, cool, thanks. Um,
catch you at dinner. See you later.
yeah, okay, cool. Um, but just even asking him and like, yeah, he's gonna do borderline illegal things before he has to contact a company, and then just like what works and what doesn't work there. So it's almost like he's expecting everybody to be biased. And so like one of the landing pages that I do, this comparison framework, and we've actually implemented this
Mhm.
collectively, which is, the comparison one, which is what are my options in the market? And just being so agnostic about that, even in the top, not even the whole page, but even just the top part of the page, and just saying, okay, you have these problems. Here are some alternatives in the market. Here are some risks that you need to look out for if you go with one of these alternatives. And, here are some things that we've solved for sure, but like telling them like, hey, I'm going to help you make this decision, um, whether you choose me or not. And I think ultimately that makes them choose you because you were the only one that didn't just like shove their product down your throat. They were like the only ones that were honest with you about what your options are. And you may not like that may not be the option for them right now, but they're going to remember that. Like I will never forget when I saw the Loom and Vidyard landing pages. I talk about that like constantly years later, even though Loom's completely changed it now that they've been bought. But it's that kind of stuff where it's like, oh snap, I was not expecting them to say something nice about their competitor. It's like, what? And that immediately builds trust. And no one ever thinks about that.
So I've got a question that actually is going to go down like the exact opposite of trust, in my opinion. Have you done anything with ABM landing pages where you are essentially created a landing page to target a specific company and personalize the messaging for that company to the point where it's almost too personal for that
Creepy.
company, or maybe not have you done it, but have you seen it, and what's your opinion on it?
Like, hey, Joe, I see that you
Yeah.
bought those $7 eggs.
Exactly.
Yeah. Uh, so no, I have not done ABM landing pages. I've had a couple of companies talk to me about them and want to do them. And it's hard, right? Because like it's probably not cost effective for someone to come to me and be like, I need, because the way, again, back to the way we do it in B2B is like, oh, you want an ABM strategy? Yeah, let's hit up these 100 accounts. And you're like, okay, it's not ABM. That's just marketing. Okay. That's just like, and so I always tell them, I'm like, yeah, I could probably give you a template, but like at the end of the day, a template's a template. It's the copy and the substance that you're going to put into it. Who's going to tell them how to balance that information out, right? Like, what are you going to use that's going to make Microsoft want to purchase? Like, what are you going to say on there when you have like an account that's visiting, but then you have like 20 or 30 people in the buying committee who are on that? How personalized can you actually get without being creepy, or that you have information about them that they never provided you or don't remember providing you. So like I get it with the ABM, like you want that personalized stuff, but I've never, like, again, as an in-house buyer, I've seen ABM pages where it's like, hey, Tas at Telium. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you used a freaking token and a variable. Like, I'm not dumb, you know? Um, but then also then if you think of someone who's like an infosec or like cybersecurity space or IT space, like that's a red flag to them, I feel like. Because they're like, WTF, I never gave you my info.
Yeah.
Also, how safe is this? How securely are you using my information? So there's a lot of questions there. So I feel like personalization needs to be more like behavioral or journey based rather than personal characteristic based. I don't know, like, hey, I love dogs too. Want to get a demo? Like, I don't know, I just feel like
Yeah,
it's
it's almost like it should fall in like what they do, one to one, one to few, one to many, where you're grouping the few in like, okay, these are similar industries that have similar problems that have, so it's, you can do the personalization at that scale. But I feel like once you go to like one to one ABM landing pages, one, that's not scalable at all. You made that point, and
yeah.
also kind of creepy.
Yeah. And like also, I mean, you always hear like the best marketing isn't really scalable. So like that's less the problem. It's like you're kind of dancing around with ethics a little bit. And I think that's where you kind of got to ask yourself, ultimately, what is the information they're collecting? Why do I need to make it so personalized for this one account? Is it something that's really different? Like if you take two healthcare companies and you want to target them, wouldn't their issues be the same? Like they still under the same regulations. Maybe they have a few things that are different, but is that so important to call out? Like I don't, you know what I mean? So I feel like a digital sales room is great because you've had a conversation with them and then you can customize based on that conversation, which isn't so creepy. It's more like consensual. But then you have this, like, I always like take it back to, I take us out of like where we are and put us in an analogy where if I was on a dating app and someone swiped and they were like, "Hey, Taz," I'm like, who the, like, loved what you were wearing today. I'm like, what the fuck is going on?
Fill out my form.
Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, that would be so freaking weird. Like, hey, how's your mom? I saw she visited today. And you're like, how do you know this about me? So then you're gonna have them focus on the wrong things, I feel like.
So, I mean, we're talking about personalization in this context, but I also feel like ABM landing pages, if we want to call it such, are a perfect example of focusing on consumption over conversion, though. And anybody that says differently of like, oh, well, what's the lead capture? In every situation that has come up to me, it's like, why do we need that? Their information. What the hell are you grabbing this information for?
Right. Yeah.
Like that is in a nutshell why shifting from conversion consumption is important. And if you need a testing ground for this, why not test it there?
Yes. Yeah. Because that's exactly right. Like there's no forms typically on ABM pages because you know who you're talking to and what you're doing. And you're trying to get them to engage with the content. And then the way Sixth Sense and Roll Works and all those companies report back is like penetration, engagement, all of those things. And um, again, this isn't the post tomorrow, but I asked like Hockey Stacks Odin about the downstream effects of basically engagement or consumption on conversions. And it gave me this whole write up. And I was like, I'm like cheering and singing on the thing because like it's nice to talk about it and it makes sense, but to validate it with information and data is like great from a different party. So watch out for that one tomorrow. But it is that because like ultimately they have a business justification to put it through, whether they're feeling it deeply, whether they're hurting, whether they're logical, whatever it is that the buyer's doing, ultimately they need to justify the purchase. And what are the things that you would need to justify a purchase? Anything from a pair of pants all the way to 30, 40, 50, $100,000 SaaS, you need to justify the purchase. And what are the components and core components and tenets of that? And then making sure you're giving them the right information.
So if we're not measuring a landing page's success on the amount of leads that it's driving or revenue it's generating through an e-commerce motion, how are we measuring its success?
The roundabout way, which is like Pranav at Paramark talks about this all the time, which is causation and correlation. And I'm very on board with that type of measurement where I feel like, again, what B2B loves to do is like, let's go down to like, is this creative influencing pipeline? And it's like, bro, do you know how much shit they've seen from us? If you're doing more than 2 channels, they've seen a ton of stuff from you. To try to deduce it down to like a single piece of creative or whatever. I mean, there's some leading indications like, oh, this creative had a little more engagement or whatever. But I'll ask you guys this because I saw this in house. Our state of whatever report that we had 10,000 downloads on. So obviously there was interest there. But then just our bottom of funnel, like demo campaign that had far less engagement. But then the downstream impact, obviously they were high intent. They were demo requests. And those converted and had higher, like faster deal velocity than, the state of whatever report because they're not ready, right? It's just as
Duh.
simple. Yeah, it's such a duh thing. But if you just looked at the numbers and you're like, oh, the demo one didn't get as many views, people weren't that interested, like kill it. Right? Let's just keep going
Yeah.
with the state of CDP. And it's so we're gonna do like this volume versus, like the volume of engagement, like with this top of funnel asset versus a high intent demo. You're not gonna kill a demo campaign just because the numbers aren't as high converting because you got 30 here instead of 10,000. So that's kind of where I'm going, which is like there are other indications of whether something's a success.
So I believe in what you were talking about before about correlation, causation. The thing that I don't like in that use case specifically is media mix modeling is like pretty much never going to work for B2B because nobody in B2B spends enough. Maybe like a Calendly or a HubSpot or a Salesforce, like you need to be spending in like $500,000 a month or more in media to even like go and be on multiple channels to have that be relevant. I like a lot more what like Hockey Stack is doing, where they're tracking the different touch points along the customer journey, and you can find the commonalities in that customer journey. Was it they say 86 different touch points? It is a little bit crazy. You can
It's
also see
insane.
why any sort of modeling also becomes very difficult when you have 86 touch points, but you're only spending 30 to 50K a month on media spend and all your other stuff. It just becomes super hard. But if you can see, like, okay, this person saw these LinkedIn ads, went through these landing pages, read this content, attended this event, like you can see the correlation there more visually of anybody who has ended up being closed won. I feel like that's better reporting. It doesn't give you the nice, pretty, how much did I spend? How much did we make? And I think that that's what everybody in B2B wants and is kind of unrealistic. but I think that that's like the right way to measure the effectiveness of stuff.
Yeah, but if sales cycles are 3 months long, right? You're going to let a landing page that sucks sit around for 3 months. Like, what are we tangibly measuring to say whether it's working or not? Like, you can't wait to say, yeah, it influences this amount of revenue if it takes 3 months to get that damn revenue.
Tas, you could go, or I could go on this.
You go. Let me hear. Let me hear your opinion. I have
It's
also
it's
opinions.
the same thing where you have lead, like any measurement technique has to have like leading indicators and whatever the end desired result is, right? Like, yes, it's always good to look back at close one and work back of all those deals and see kind of what happened so you have an idea. But with anything, there's leading indicators. Like with ungated content on LinkedIn ads, you can see whether or not people liked the content, whether it's based on their click-through rate, social interactions, the percentage of videos that they watched. Like, you do have to compare those against some sort of benchmark. I'm not going to say industry benchmarks, but like your own benchmarks to
Mhm.
decide whether or not that content was good. Like, was this piece of content better than this other piece? If so, push more in that direction.
And I think that's like the other part where there's like the set of landing pages that are a little more short term and things like that. And then the ones that I typically help work with are the ones that are more like forever. So
Mhm.
we wouldn't have the question of like, should we turn it off or not? It's going to be more of a, uh, how do we evolve it, or what's the next thing that the data is telling us? So can I talk about the example, James, that you and I talked about
Go for
last
it.
week?
Yeah,
Okay,
go for it.
that our collective landing page experience, right? So for anybody who doesn't know, um, I worked with Dragon on, a Snag It campaign, which we talked about the wild success, whatever, on LinkedIn when it happened. But we created a landing page that was very much on the consumption based philosophy to test it out. And I think it's still live. I don't know if there's still anyone sending any traffic there or not, but um, I was looking at all of their other landing pages, and I told James this. I was like, every other landing page had like a 3 point something conversion rate. Um, the ones that we did were like 1.6, something around that, right? But what the client ended up telling us was like they saw 265% increase in purchases, right? Not even like the whatever the conversion is. That's the statistic that we shared. Um, because of this like long form page that was very, very specific for technical writers, and where we talked about their specific problems, how we solved it specifically for them, the same objections, all of those things. And then the biggest example with the consumption piece is when we were running the test for it after been running for a few weeks, we saw like 15% of the clicks out of 2,000 clicks, 15% was on the fourth FAQ about like, if I bought this lifetime license, but I moved devices, do I still gotta keep my license? Like, what the hell is going on here? But to see like 100 and something clicks just on that, like anyone who's just looking at these are the people who visited and these are the people who converted would have missed that insight entirely, right? So to see how people are consuming information and are we prioritizing the right information on the page? So I think at that point, we would look at that fourth FAQ and be like, holy shit, this is a big thing that they're concerned about. Can we make that its own block, or move it up higher in the page, have it be part of the solutions block or whatever, to talk about how that like we could address this kind of earlier on and handle that objection before that happens. Conversion data is not going to give you that information, right? Only consumption data would.
And if you're in a role that has to manage against, we'll say, old school B2B thinking of, oh, this landing page isn't working because I'm not seeing the leads that are getting hang off to sales, what advice do you have somebody that's in the position that's trying to manage against that?
Well, hopefully we eliminate the whole question of like, should I even turn these off? We're gonna say like that's why I call them the foundational pages, because it's like, guys, these are like always on, always running. These are not part of our like little offshoot campaigns. So that's something. So I would say like satisfy their request with like the one-offs and like, yeah, we're gonna test a couple of things here. Here's your stupid product launch landing page, whatever. Have these running, but it takes maybe 10 minutes out of your day every couple of weeks, right? Where you can go in, look at the heat map data, look at the session recording, see how people are consuming that, and add it to your monthly reporting of like, hey, you know our evergreen pages? Here are some additional insights. And then use that as kind of like the hub to inform other landing pages in the future for your short-term stuff. Like, hey, we should definitely like Snag It Now can use that objection, which is not specific to technical writers. They can put it on every landing page going forward for any campaign, because obviously it was a big objection point and a learning that they got from that, right? So there's a balance. Satisfy their requests, but also keep this little playground that you got going for yourself, for the data and the good stuff that you actually want to do marketing wise.
Tech stack recommendations to accomplish that.
Oh, that's a good one. I try to keep it super easy for clients. So if they have an A/B testing tool, fine, we'll do it. But you can do it ratchet pre and post tests, which is kind of also how we did it. I think we did a variation with ours because we used Unbounce. But if you are building landing pages just in your CMS, you only need two things. One, whatever website analytics, if you're using GA4 or something else. And then two, some kind of heat mapping tool. Most have about 2,000 sessions that are free. So if you can get it past your IT department or whatever to approve, like just putting a free trial, a free account, free scripts. I know I always ran into that issue, like free, that means it's not secure or whatever. I'm like, okay, great. But try to get one heat mapping tool and then just whatever website analytics you're using. That's all you need to get started.
Have you tried feeding any of this into an AI tool that aggregates it and then synthesizes it yet?
Like what part? What am I feeding it?
I don't know. I'm just asking.
Tell us your AI automation workflow for landing page.
I'm just thinking, like, if you have heat maps right over here, you've got scroll maps and all that data, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got the session recordings. Those two typically are not talking to each other. Yeah, you
No.
can get overlays, but the recordings you have to watch each one individually.
Yeah.
They don't roll up. Like,
Yeah.
is there a way that have you tried finding a way to synthesize that and feeding it all into something that aggregates?
Not the session recordings, because that one's like hard, right? There's no transcripts, there's nothing. So it's like, eh. But if you look at like having it do the analysis for you based on very like set guardrails that I would put into place. I have a lot of like custom things built for like research, audits, things like that. But not for the reporting part yet, just because I'm still going to have to collect like part of the data qualitatively. And because I'm so focused on the behavioral side of things with landing pages, sometimes it's like, it's not going to see the things I'm going to see, you know?
Okay. All right. So as we kind of come to a close here, I want to ask a question just to kind of go back through everything we just talked about in a snapshot. What does it mean to somebody that's listening to move from conversion to consumption?
Yeah, I always tell people this, which is I'm not telling you to forego conversions, right? I'm not saying it's consumption, like measure for consumption and not conversions at all. Fuck conversions. I mean, kind of.
We just kept our rating there, but go ahead.
that was the name of my talk at Hero Conference last year, which was like, I said forget conversions because my first slide was marketers are fucked, and my coach was like, yeah, let's not try to start with like fuck conversions, marketers are fucked, everything's
just send it.
like keep going. It's not one or the other. It's saying like, guys, we're like skipping a whole level and going conversions, sales outcomes, like immediately, right? There's a whole stage that happens before that. And it's how people are consuming the information. And are you giving them the right information for them to eventually convert, whether it is on your landing page or directly on the website? That is kind of like the reframe that we need to do. And so don't kill your landing pages too soon. Watch how people are interacting with it. And this is like not to throw shade against like any surveying tool or like Winter or something like that, right? Because people are like, oh, why don't we just run it through Winter and see what they say? And I'm like, totally do that. But also run it with this actual experiment, because I always talk about it as like kind of like what people do behind closed doors and what they say they do are like two different things, right? I've taken a lot of those surveys and I want to sound smart. So I'm like, yeah, that looks wrong. No, I would probably go down here, whatever. Then you watch a recording of tasks on a page and I'm like rage clicking because I can't get this button to work and I'm pissed off, right? Like you will learn so much from watching how people behave versus just listening to what they're saying. right? Because they want to sound smart. So consumption will give you the path to like, what is the information they care about? What is the information that they are not finding on the page? Where is the next logical step that they're looking for? It? Are they missing something? Are they getting stuck somewhere on the page? Is there a technical issue? You will never know these things based on just conversion data. And therefore, don't just dismiss your landing pages as unsuccessful because of that.
All right, before we let you go, one piece of advice for somebody to improve what we just talked about and their landing page performance in 2025. One, not three, one.
One, your best tool is going to be specificity. So if you want to just fix your landing page right now, and I'm not talking about like performance and loading, we're just assuming that the freaking page loads, okay? Take all that copy, plug it into ChatGPT, or there's like Hemingway and like all these other things, and just ask it like, remove all the buzzwords, speak in active voice, and like, would I say this one-to-one with somebody, right? Not above an 8th grade level, and just clean up that copy. That already will get you so much further than anything else that you could possibly do on the page.
And a fourth rule, no M dashes.
No, listen, I use them sometimes, but like
Sure you do.
now I feel like it's tainted, right? Like I mean, I don't. It's very rare. I'm a small dash person because that's easier to hit on the keyboard. But like that's just me.
All right, Tas, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we close it out, how can people find you? Where do you hang out? And how can they connect with you and reach out?
I'm on LinkedIn. If it was a physical place, they would say I would be a squatter. Yeah. And so my husband says I spend way too much time there. So find me there. Come for the landing page insights. Stay for the ratchet comments. That's kind of like my little fun thing on Instagram. On LinkedIn, I'm no, not on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram for lots of meme content if you'd like that kind of stuff. But yeah, LinkedIn, find me, Tas Bober, Tas like sass.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Tas, for joining us. Hopefully we'll see you back for a fourth time. But until next time, everybody, we'll catch you later.